because all the victims, all the survivors that I've ever spoken with have remembered everything.
Where she lost me, I had a less traumatic incident when I was 14, and where she completely lost me. I grew up in a single-parent household there were 6 kids. When I was 14, I had something like that happen to me. I didn't tell my mom right away, but I wouldn't leave her side for months.
Right.
So when she first started to lose me was when she said that they went to the grocery store and she wanted to go in a separate entrance just weeks later, weeks after she almost died. Then the fact that she had the physical composure to say hi to someone that was in that room. When I saw my attacker when I was 18 and we had a home invasion. I was raped in my home at gunpoint in front of my family. When I saw him in court, I became physically ill. I couldn't look him in the eye until it was time to identify him, but I became physically ill, and I have a horrible memory. My family laughs about it all the time. They'll say to me, "Mom, don't you remember?" And I'll say, "That was your first mistake." But I can remember what I was wearing, every single detail in both times, every single detail. There's nothing that isn't completely clear and cemented in my memory. And I found her not credible with regard to Kavanaugh. And honestly, I hate to say this, but I find her not credible. I'm trying to be as open-minded as possible because I was in law enforcement and I know what the standards are. But my gut on her is no. She's been.
Well, I'm with you, but you and I both know that the left said, well, here's what we're going to do with Blasey Ford. No matter what she says, the word we're going to use is credible to everybody that we talk to, and we're going to force them to all repeat credible, because then the watching and listening public will agree that she was credible. But I'm with you, and I said this early on. I believe that maybe she was a victim of something or a survivor of something. I don't think anything she said about Brett Kavanaugh was in fact credible. In fact, that was the wrong usage of that word, and that's where I was. And I was attacked because I said that. But so what? I mean, I saw what I saw. I heard what I heard, and even her best friend doesn't corroborate. That tells me something.
No. Well, and I what blows me away is how much I have personally been attacked by other survivors. I'll call them victims because they've allowed it to victimize their life. But what blows me away is I had a guy friend that I grew up with that, well, I can't believe with your history you don't just believe her. I would be doing a complete disservice if I did.
I agree. We have to run. Great phone call. I appreciate you taking the time. I mean, that's somebody who really gets it. We come back, it'll be Donald Trump Jr. here on the weekend. Stay here.
Message and data rates may apply. Earning your degree from one of the top business schools in the country might sound impossible to fit into your workload. But what if there were a business degree that furthered your career and gave you access to world-renowned faculty, leaders, and mentors, all on your schedule? One that opened doors to some of the most influential CEOs, tech companies, law firms, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders. And what if you could earn that degree in as little as 16 months, 100% online? To find out more, text OFFER to 79645. That's OFFER to 79645. Start your online MBA, Information Management, or Business Analytics Master's Program from the W.P. Carey School of Business at Arizona State University today. Learn more about the W.P. Carey Business Graduate Programs online. Text OFFER to 79645.
Howdy, I'm back with something new for the people of Guam. KFC's new pickle fried chicken. A different KFC fried chicken experience. Straight from the States. Get a 9-piece family meal with 3 live sides and 4 biscuits. Or try our pickle crispy strips with 2 regular sides in a $5 box. Hurry to KFC today and try the new KFC pickle fried chicken. KFC, it's finger-licking good.
Introducing Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzky.
Hi, I'm Bob.
Purveyor of truth and justice.
Well, hold on. That's a bit over the top, isn't it? I just want to tell the Points International radio listening audience and Tall Tales buffs all over the world to take heart. I'm back. Tall Tales airs afternoons at 4 right here on The Point. Ray says set your radio to 93.3 FM and forget it. You needn't touch it again.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Plans for a celebration end in tragedy. I'm Ann Carrick, Fox News. 20 people were killed Saturday in a limousine crash in the town of Schoharie, New York, west of Albany. The limousine reportedly headed to a birthday party. Chris Fiore with New York State Police.
The scene has been cleared at this time, and the victims have been transported to Albany Medical Center, where autopsies are now being conducted. The State Police investigation is continuing with interviews, evidence processing, and collision reconstruction.
Police say the SUV limousine went through a stop sign, hitting a parked empty vehicle at the Apple Barrel Country Store, in addition to hitting two pedestrians. Tropical depression Michael picking up strength and heading towards the Gulf Coast. Fox meteorologist Adam Klotz.
Pretty good agreement as where this is going to head as it starts to move north. You see several models there stretching along the Gulf Coast there, the Florida Gulf Coast, maybe running over towards portions of Alabama or Mississippi. Still a little early to know where this will be making landfall, but the timeline currently, we're looking at this getting to the coast perhaps on Wednesday.
Florida Governor Rick Scott declaring a state of emergency for some areas. For critics of new Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, the fight is not over.
Delaware Senator and Judiciary Committee member Chris Coons, a Democrat, says Justice Kavanaugh may now be on the high court, but Coons says his mind has not been changed.
I think there are good reasons to have doubts about now Justice Kavanaugh's candor to the committee and fitness to serve.
But to hear that the result of a possible midterm takeover of the House by Democrats could mean impeachment talk for Kavanaugh, Senator Coons said on NBC's Meet the Press.
I think that's premature.
He says what he and his fellow senators should be concerned about is healing the political division this has caused. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
This is Fox News.
The problem isn't just not being able to hear or understand, or having to tell people to speak louder. Sometimes the frustration is having to repeat yourself too many times, or speaking so loud you're almost shouting. At Guam Hearing Doctors, we understand that hearing problems affect both sides. One of our goals is to help your hearing for those around you. Call us at 989-TEST to learn more.
It's important to have claims process that works for you. At Guahan Insurance Services, we make things simple and convenient. Same door you walk in to purchase your insurance is the same door you open to file your claim. We can't pretend that the car insurance claims process is fun, but we can promise a hassle-free and speedy recovery without any runarounds. For your home, auto, and business insurance, visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center on Marine Corps Drive in Tamuning. Don't forget to like us on Facebook or give us a call at 475-1162 or text 929-SAVE. That's 929-7283.
Opinion.
Violence in Chicago claims the life of a toddler.
Police say 2-year-old Julian Gonzalez was fatally shot when someone fired into a crowd outside a party Saturday night. Detectives say a fight between two women had spilled out of the house and into an alley where a crowd had gathered. The little boy was on the sidewalk outside a home when the shots were fired. Julian was with an 18-year-old man who was shot in the leg and survived. In a separate incident Saturday, 18-year-old James Garrett was fatally shot while attending a vigil on the city's far south side. Police say about 100 people were at the vigil when an argument broke out and two people started shooting. Tom Rigotti, Fox News.
A controversy is brewing in Australia. Plans to use the famed Sydney Opera House to project a horse racing advertisement is dividing Australians. The New South Wales state government stepped in to allow the advertisement after the Opera House chief executive opposed it. The state premier says the ad for the Everest horse race was toned down from the original proposal. More than 130,000 people signed an online petition to stop the promotion. While some argue for the economic benefits, others say the idea is crass commercialism and threatens the iconic building's value as a World Heritage Site. Looking for a new sport? How about jetpack racing?
Richard Browning has spent years developing a jet engine-powered suit that allows a person to take flight. And now he's making it competitive.
It's going to be astounding and phenomenal, and we are doing this.
Browning outlining plans for a new racing series next year, with men and women from different sporting backgrounds competing over water.
The ideas and opportunities that are slotting into our journey are just kind of mind-blowing.
The suit is made up of 5 miniature jet engines mounted on the pilot's body. It's already on sale in a department store here in London for $440,000. In London, Simon Owen, Fox News.
I'm Ann Carrick, and this is Fox News.
Hey, what's that?
Oh, it's a Subway Big Hot Pastrami.
My Big Hot Pastrami?
No, back up. My Subway Big Hot Pastrami. Get your own.
Get your own Subway Big Hot Pastrami. Tender, juicy beef on freshly baked bread. Enjoy yours with mustard and pickles. Get a Big Hot Pastrami at your favorite Subway location. It's so good you won't want to share. For a limited time only. Subway, make it what you want.
The Bob Klitsky Show is brought to you by Sanford Technology Group, STG, delivering service that can't be beat.
Family Finance, serving the people of Guam since 1959. Now you can start planning for the holidays by getting a personal Christmas loan from $1,000 up to $3,500. Family Finance has 3 convenient locations to serve you. Give them a call in Dededo, 633-4473, Hagåtña, 475-4545, and the Upper Tumon location on the 2nd floor of the Pacific Building at 647-5626. Get your Christmas loans today from Family Finance.
Call the experts at Guam Hearing Doctors if you're worried about your hearing. The evaluation is simple and painless.
Here at APL, our core values give the company its heart and soul. Whether it's connecting your business with our global network through our newly enhanced service or investing our efforts into giving back to the community, APL is committed to serving you. We humbly honor the opportunity to find innovative solutions for you and your business. To learn more about our enhanced service, call 588-4651 or visit www.apl.com/Guam for more details.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitsky, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitsky.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Well, I'm perhaps going to have to change my read-in here, since my persuasive efforts with our international radio listening audience obviously were fruitful in that Judge Brett Kavanaugh is now a Supreme Court Justice of the United States. I'm a little bit remiss because I didn't suggest that when he went before the Judiciary Committee of the U.S. Senate that he was not given a reading test to see if he could read the letters M-I-L-I-T-I-A. But I'm assuming the best. I'm hoping that Judge Kavanaugh can read the word militia, unlike the late Justice Antonin Scalia, may he rest in peace, who obviously couldn't. But there's hope now that we have a new person on the Supreme Court, Justice Kavanaugh, that perhaps he'll be a better reader than Nino Scalia was at the time that he decided Hiller and McDonald. So we'll just have to wait and see, I guess. But as I said, I have high hopes. With respect to my high hopes, I'm feeling glad, of course, that Kavanaugh was confirmed to the Supreme Court through a rather bloody battle, which I'll get to when we get to the card. I feel a little bit bad though, for one of our really good callers, a gentleman named Tom. What's Tom's last name, Real Joe Cruz?
Poole?
Tom Poole, the very one,
yes.
Yeah, Tom Poole, who said that I had predicted that Kavanaugh would not be confirmed because the Republicans weren't capable of playing enough bare-knuckle politics like the Democrats did to move the nomination forward. Well, I was wrong about that. Kavanaugh was confirmed. I guess Tom is out of pocket $100. I think the best I could do, Tom, I'm going to offer you a lifetime free membership to the Tall Tales Nation Citizens Group. So when your annual subscription comes up, I'm just going to waive it for you and, give it a couple of years, and you should come out even on that one. So much for the Second Amendment. I go now to Meet the Press, which Joe Cruz, the real Joe Cruz, has a clever theme song for, which he always plays as I'm explaining that we call it Zemi Ikotni, which is my backwards bilingual play on words, press the meet, because what we're really talking about here is Meet the Press. Yeah, there he goes. Meet the Press. And that's when we compare the editorials of each of the two newspapers to see who gets the coveted blue star, which I left in my briefcase. So I'm going to have to scat over to my briefcase in order to put that blue star on the winning editorial. So we'll start out here, and you'll recall that the object here is to find out which newspaper has the hard-hitting, edgy editorial that really tells us something, tries to persuade us into doing something that we might not otherwise do, generally states the policy of that paper. So we start out here with the Daily News. You can always depend on the Daily News. And the Daily News says, check fire alarms, prevent fire-related deaths. On Friday, Lieutenant Governor Ray Tenorio proclaimed October 8th as Fire Prevention Week, reminding Guam residents to be alert to surroundings and pay attention to fire warning from experts. Now, I can't resist here. I guess one part of fire prevention would be to make sure that Ray Tenorio didn't have any matches. But that's a little bit catty even for Tall Tales, right, real Joe Cruz? So the national theme is look, listen, learn. Be aware. Fire can happen anywhere. That's really a hot subject. And here's some hints. Install smoke alarms in every bedroom. They should also be outside each sleeping level and on every level of the home. I think the code requires that there be one smoke alarm in every stairwell, but I don't know for sure. There are probably people out there that are more checked out on smoke alarms than I am. It's best to use interconnected smoke alarms so that when one smoke alarm sounds, they all sound. And there's several bullet points here about smoke alarms. On Guam, we have seen lives lost and people left homeless after fires in the last year. Spending a few minutes to check your alarms and make sure everyone knows how to escape from a fire can go a long way towards preventing tragedy. Well, it's another one of those editorials that, yeah, it's what they say is true. It's correct. It's something we should all heed. It's more of a public service announcement, though, than it is an editorial. I guess one of the tests could be if this newspaper comes out in favor of smoke alarms, would the other newspaper come out in opposition to smoke alarms? I guess maybe that would be the test, because if it's not the kind of issue that could go either way, then obviously it's not edgy. There's no edge to it. So, okay, Daily News, we'll give you a check mark here. You had an editorial, and it was about smoke alarms, etc. Now, as is my usual custom, when I get to an editorial page, I also look around on the editorial page to see if there's anything else of interest to our international radio listening audience. And by the way, my bad, I forgot to remind you that anyone out there in our international radio listening audience can call Tall Tales by dialing 1-671-85, as you were, 888-8255, 888-8255. That's our Guam number, 888-8255. So here's a letter to the editor from the indefatigable Paul Zerzan, a resident of Barragata. Paul's written several letters to the editor. He has been a columnist for the Post in the past, and he usually writes some pretty provocative stuff. A lot of times he generates a lot of disagreement, and that's the meaning of provocative, isn't it? So Paul says, are there any English dictionaries on Guam? Are there any legal dictionaries on Guam? I ask these questions because I am puzzled that so many people do not know the meaning of the word plebiscite. The definition of plebiscite is simple and universal. Quote, the direct vote of all members of an electorate on an important public question. Please note it says all members of an electorate. Therefore, any voting restricted to native inhabitants is not and cannot be considered a plebiscite. The United Nations rules for decolonization require universal adult universal adult suffrage on any questions of political status. This means any public discourse on a decolonization plebiscite being restricted on ancestral lines is illogical, illegal, and in defiance of UN laws and regulations. Those who want to call a native inhabitant vote a plebiscite look silly. If they are legal professionals or public officials, their ignorance is a disgrace to their profession, and they should be reprimanded. Boy, yeah. Maybe Paul should hang around the editorial boardroom of the Daily News a little bit more, because there's no softball here in Paul's editorial. He comes right out, and as the saying goes, he says a mouthful. So I think some clarification is probably necessary here in some of the points that Paul makes. Starting out with some of the really easy ones. The United Nations, the UN, doesn't make laws. And I can't tell you how thankful I am that the United Nations doesn't make laws. The United Nations is kind of like a gigantic international coffee klatch where people sit around and talk about things that they think are important, and then as far as this kind of activity is concerned, give advice to member states in the United Nations as to what the United Nations thinks they ought to do. So, and I've talked about decolonization before, and our so-called Decolonization Commission, which I have rechristened the Chamorro Movement for Independence Commission. But when it comes to decolonization, we're all living in a colony. So all of us, Chamorro or non-Chamorro, are in a position to bear whatever happens when decolonization occurs. Now, the Decolonization Commission has addressed itself to only one thing, and that is Chamorro self-determination, not the decolonization of Guam, but Chamorro self-determination. And Chamorro self-determination has really meant, as far as that commission is concerned, an independent, Chamorros, those Chamorros who favor an independent Guam speaking up on that question. Now, there's a misconception that the so-called plebiscite that Paul has ranted against is going to determine the political status of Guam. Not so. It's purely an advisory plebiscite or whatever to determine the wishes of folks who are Chamorro or native inhabitants, depends on how you want to slice that one. And I've said before, I'm kind of interested in that subject as to how Chamorros actually feel about what some people think are the only three options available to the island of Guam. I'm pretty interested in it. I don't know how crazy I am about paying for it. That's kind of my hang-up, being pretty Moschino when you come right down to it. So I've got I've got Vanessa on the line. Hi, Vanessa. Thanks for starting the show off right with a phone call.
Hi. This is Dr. Vanessa Oshiro with Mariana's Vet Care, and I am actually calling with regard to the new marijuana bill that just passed. It's a little bit frustrating for me. I hope you can hear me. I'm actually speaking on my cell phone in my car.
I can hear you 5 by 5, Vanessa.
All right, great. I just wanted to express my real concern about how these measures continue to be passed. I have actually testified a number of times on the matter, just out of personal experience, and it's not easy to go out there every time something like this comes up, but we continue to do so. I have come to testify. Another person that I just met through the process has come to testify. We've protested. We've actually held our signs, just the two of us on the street in Tamuni, hoping that there would be common sense in government. I actually don't understand how it is that the government doesn't realize that this doesn't make sense to those of us who really understand how dangerous this whole process is, how it's been passed. I actually testified to the fact that when the bill went to the ballot, they actually didn't even bring it to the professional boards that would be able to comment on whether or not it was made sense to do or not. All of that happened without due process, I would say. And the people of Guam were made to vote on it, I think, with some measure of, I don't want to say deceit, but it just didn't seem like a fully honest sort of presentation to the electorate. And I didn't know that until I did my research to just come out and speak against what was going on at that time, the most recent public hearing back in December, when this whole thing was up for discussion about recreational marijuana tourism. This island needs to stop and take a moment, I think, to really reflect on what you are doing. If you are in government, you are in authority, and if you are a person of faith in government, God will hold you accountable. Ultimately, government is here to support what is appropriate and right in the sight of who we call the ultimate authority. Now, people may debate me, and you may not agree that there is a God, but I think most of Guam believes in God, and I believe the current elected officials have actually stated that they have faith-based and have shown that in how they have voted and passed things that have passed and come and gone. I believe this is an island that still believes in God, and I thank God that we are that island, because we are actually doing something that's very different, and that the world only now, even stateside is taking a page out of our book and following. And I believe that these are these times where we have to really own what we are doing. When you are in authority, when you are a person in the government, you are in authority, and you are actually setting the example. The people, each of us, have our own role to play, and we have to also ultimately be accountable to our Creator. I believe that so much that I will continue to come out against this and speak out against it, even though it's not easy. It's not nice. But I will tell you, it comes from a very honest place, because my own brother has been lost to our family. He came home, and now he's still lost, and I just don't want to see that happen to anyone when I know that it doesn't need to. And I really believe our elected officials know and understand that too. I just want to make sure that the people of Guam pay attention, because if this thing happens, it will be out of my control. I am just one person. But I want to tell every person who is pushing this forward as something that's good for Guam, you really better be careful and make sure that your heart is really in that place where you really are saying that this is needed because of the right reason, what you're purporting that to be, that is for pain and suffering, that's your intent, because God knows the difference, and he will judge you. He will judge you in this world, and that's actually merciful, because in this world, we're going to receive our consequences. On this side, it's much more merciful than on the other side. So no one should be surprised if this thing passes that we're going to have to suffer what we ought to suffer if we want to see heaven. This is my very firm conviction. I'm pretty much out of ideas. I'm just praying to God that the governor will have some sense about this and will actually change things by vetoing it. And if he doesn't, that the authorities, the federal authorities are paying attention and listening somewhere, someone is listening and will come in front of this so that Guam will not be the place that has to suffer the consequences for the few who are in power, who want more, because people we know could have done better than what they did in putting this out. And that's as much as I want to say. I think that's plenty. I do have an appointment to see, but I thank you for your time.
Well, you got here just in time, Vanessa, didn't you?
I hope so. But
yeah. Well, you know, I have on the card for today an item called platypus versus cannabis.
Wow.
Platypus, because the bill that the legislature passed has all of the characteristics of a duck-billed platypus. It's the poorest piece of legislation drafting I think I've ever seen. As far as the substance, you and I aren't too far apart. My thinking is that that marijuana is a Schedule I drug. It's against federal law to own it, to have it, to grow it, to sell it, etc. And what we're doing right now is we're playing a kind of a game like, well, we can get away with it, therefore we're going to do it.
Exactly.
And we got some good reasons that we can do it. One of the good reasons is because it's a palliative, but we really just want to have marijuana because it makes us feel good. And I just question whether we need another mind-altering drug right now when we have so many drug problems on the island, right, Vanessa?
Exactly. And, you know, it's such a confusing, you know, we have a generation that's, you know, millennials that are so confused already. And then the generation behind them, there's still hope for them. And I've seen those kids in career days, and I'm so glad that God is moving something in them because they want something better, but they have to be given the example. If you are showing them an example of how to be shady, well, we're doing a really good job about that right now, because just enough for us to talk about Mandanya Drug Task Force and how we're busting all the drugs, but on the other hand, I'm for medicinal marijuana for those people to grow it in their house. How are you going to enforce that? How are you going to enforce that? Right now, the kids are showing up with marijuana in middle school. They're coming to the principal's office for things like, you know, a pill vial worth of marijuana in their possession in these middle schools. And this is based on someone who worked for me. The kids being like shown these kind of things in schools. These things are happening in schools right now. If you don't have kids, you don't know that. I don't have kids, but somehow a little bird manages to show me what's happening in these schools. Because I don't have kids, I can go out there and speak to the people who are in authority and not worry about, you know, whether my kid's going to be, you know, basically a target of something, because you know that happens on Guam. And it could happen to me even right now. But the reality is, I am so convicted that this is that dangerous. For those of us who are in faith, you understand the mind of Christ is what the goal is. If you let this sort of thing in your kid's head, you might as well just open the door a little bit bigger to let whatever else is coming in after that. See, now, if I didn't have that as personal experience, maybe I wouldn't be this convicted about it, but you do not want to see what happened to your one kid. And it's happened to more than one kid.
Vanessa?
With my own eyes.
Vanessa, I thank you very much for calling and saying that, which a lot of people don't want to say. The real Joe Cruz is playing Dave Brubeck's Take 5, so I've got to take a break. But I'm really glad you called, and thank you for calling.
Thank you so much for the time, and I appreciate your show. I appreciate your viewpoint, and I promise, you know, this is not for me first.
John Gibson, Digging Up History. How an American ally flipped and became one of America's most bitter enemies. That story after this. Let's talk heirloom sheets and towels from Redland Cotton in Alabama. First, the family farm, growing the finest cotton in the world. The spinning, the looming, every step made in America, right down to the cutting and sewing. Sheets designed from a long-lost 1920s weave. The softest, most comfortable, longest-lasting sheets you've ever slept on. The Redland family, dedicated to America and linens you'll treasure. Check out redlandcotton.com for America's linen. redlandcotton.com. In 1945, American teams parachuted into Indochina to help rebels fight the Japanese in Vietnam. They found the leader of the guerrilla group seriously ill. The Americans thought he was going to die, but they didn't give up on him. They nursed him and brought him back to health. The next thing, the guerrilla leader was asking for help again to free the Vietnamese from the French. This time the Americans decided they wouldn't help because, well, they didn't like the guerrilla leader's politics. The next thing, the Americans were fighting this guerrilla leader, the man whose life they saved, only to see a one-time friend become an enemy. That guerrilla, now our enemy, went by a name that means he who enlightens. In Vietnamese, Ho Chi Minh. I'm John Gibson, digging up history.
Grilled salmon, petite sirloin. Can't decide.
What are you doing?
Making my top 10 list of favorite dishes at Ruby Tuesday.
You really need to get a hobby.
But I can't decide. There's no way I can narrow down so many classic dishes to just 10.
Then it's a good thing Ruby Tuesday did it for you.
It's the all-time favorites menu at Ruby Tuesday Guam. We took our most popular dishes and put them on one great menu for only $14.99. Hickory pork chop, Parmesan shrimp pasta, prime loco moco. 10 top sellers at one great price. Pick your favorite for a limited time at Ruby Tuesday Guam.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitsky, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Well, that was an interesting call from Vanessa following this, the marijuana or cannabis controversy through the legislature. And as I mentioned before, Dennis Rodriguez's bill is the duck-bill platypus of bill drafting. You'll recall from your study of biology that the duck-bill platypus is a strange mammal that lives in Australia. It's an aquatic mammal. It has a beak like a duck, webbed feet like a duck. It is a mammal. It lays eggs. It nurses its young. It's just a really strange concoction, and that's what Dennis Rodriguez's bill looks like with executive orders and legislative resolutions, etc. I've went into the substance of my position on marijuana and cannabis last week, and I kind of related a little bit to Vanessa. As long as it's a Schedule I drug, and as long as everyone in our legislature takes an oath to uphold the laws of the United States, and as long as our governor is governed by this part of the Organic Act, he shall be responsible for the faithful execution of the laws of Guam and the laws of the United States applicable to Guam. We shouldn't be horsing around with a Schedule I drug. And Vanessa makes a good point. What kind of an example are we setting? We've established ourselves as, well, we can get away with it, so let's just go ahead and do it because it's probably okay. Vanessa touched on the idea of enforcement, and I have this on the card. It's like fifth on the card. I might not get to it, so while we're talking about it, one of the items that I had on the card that is relevant is a story that appeared in today's Daily News. Remember, Vanessa talked about enforcing this whole idea of home cultivation, which what we're really talking about is just the regularizing of the way things are right now with respect to illegality. And the headline of the story that ran in this morning's Daily News, Gov Guam can't enforce 7-year-old health law on vending machines. 7 years ago, we passed a law that said a law mandating healthy food and drinks be sold in vending machines at all Government of Guam offices has been on the books for 7 years, but GovGuam has not been enforcing it, saying it lacks access to a nutritionist to evaluate the products, among other challenges. So no matter what it is, tobacco tax, you name it, we'll find some way of not enforcing it. And this statute actually has two different dimensions. Part of it is rev tax, and part of it is public health and social services. Public health and social services would have an important role in the whole cannabis scheme if the governor signs the law. So interesting call, Vanessa, and I think Joe Cruz would tell you that you probably comply with one of, I mentioned, and talking about Paul Zurzan's letter, there are no UN laws, but there is kind of a tall tales law that talks about, how does that go about informed citizenry, real Joe?
Active and informed citizenship is not just a right, it's a duty.
Okay, so I guess Vanessa would be crowned as an active and informed citizen. The fact that she hasn't prevailed and the fact that some people might not like the positions that she takes makes it all the more necessary that we recognize her as an active and informed citizen. And of course, by calling tall tales, she's had exposure to our entire international radio listening audience and our Facebook Live audience. And if you're on Facebook Live right now, you can see that Facebook Live is actually working. It didn't work yesterday, but it is working today. So that part is working pretty well. I don't think I'm seeing my my sign-ins here. Yeah. So I ought to take a minute, I guess, to say, to recognize some of the folks that are here. Juanita, of course.
Welcome back.
Yeah, welcome back, Juanita. Juanita is always the one that kind of comes in here and turns the lights on at the beginning of the program, unlocks the door, turns the lights on, etc., does what's necessary to get the program going. And Carl has been jonesing for a lack of tall tales. It's been a long 2 days, hasn't it, Carl? And John Dalzell is here, and Brad Hewitt searching to YouTube, better video, and switching to YouTube, better audio and video quality. Oh, well, okay, Brad, but we're going to miss your pithy comments here on Facebook. I'm sure that for many of our Facebookers, your comments are one of the real attractions. So you might want to keep that in mind. Linda Gabriel and Ken Leon Guerrero kind of dropped the dime on the ever-popular host of Tall Tales this morning. If you were listening to the Ray Gibson show, Ray read a press release from the Democrat Party of Guam saying that Uggan and Limtiaco were being used by sinister forces in search of power. I'm just paraphrasing here, Ken, but I think that's kind of the way their press release was framed. And Ray Gibson said, "Well, who is this person that's in search of power?" And Ken Leon Guerrero came out and said, "Well, it's obviously Bob Klitsky with his international radio listening audience." I suppose I ought to try to deny that, but I would have to come forward with witnesses to substantiate my denial, and that might be a little bit hard. Now we got Joe Santos Servino, who voted absentee today and will be leaving on Wednesday. He says it's bad enough that there's not enough good candidates on the ballot. Hope the ones that get elected will do good for the people of Guam to alleviate their suffering, raise the quality of life, eliminate waste and corruption. All right. And Carl agrees, and Albert Eliason is here. Semper Fi, Albert. Rico Blancafor. And let's see, who else we got here? Ismael Velez. Pierre Tarin. And Brad again. CNI will quickly find out that they made a big mistake. The Gov in one bill that was passed will have the power to sidestep any rules that usually apply to the government and the regulations contained within Senator Rodriguez's bill if he signs this. It's just not a way to draft legislation. The original legislation written by Tina Rose Munya Barnes was absolutely horribly written, then pawned off on the uneducated voters on the topic. If voters knew how much trouble programs implementation would be, maybe they would have voted no. Now this legislation is written even worse. There were so many technical errors. Poor Espaldón lost his hair. Well, okay. I want to hang on to mine, so I guess I better be careful if I'm drafting any statutes. But Bob, the what does it say here? Proper people say that this is a democracy and the voters have a mandate. I don't agree with this, but just putting the argument out there. Tedo says, did these senators who supported this law get an AG opinion? Is there a conflict with the no tolerance law election? Election time may be popular for votes. And what Tedo is saying, as the Attorney General opined on the legality of their bill, and then he opines that we're just we're pandering for votes. And Brad goes back, one device on YouTube and one device on Facebook so I can comment. Good call, Brad. Good call. All right. And, okay, so that's what I guess that's what Inspector Reno from Casablanca would refer to as the usual suspects. So moving forward here, Vanessa called in, and Vanessa was loaded for bear. I think she got to the phone just in time. I think she was having a hard time holding that rap back. Just dialed the phone, and I picked her up just in time so that she wouldn't have to say that all by herself. But that's where we are with cannabis and marijuana on the island. I was explaining some of the things in Paul Zerzan's letter. I think the real takeaway is this, that when it comes to decolonization, what Paul says isn't really a plebiscite, but it's an everybody knows, right, is not to determine the political status of Guam. It's to determine how those who are of Chamorro descent or maybe native inhabitants, if there's a difference, what their sentiments are as far as free association, independence, or statehood. I've spent some time explaining why there ain't no such thing as free association. You can't get there from here. Statehood is theoretically possible, practically, given our numbers, given our location, and given the fact that states enter in pairs so that there is a balance, and given the fact that Puerto Rico has 3,500,000 people, the chances of Guam becoming a state don't even rise to the level of slim and none. So all of this activity that you're seeing at the Decolonization Commission is really saying Guam should be an independent country, independent of the United States. And my own personal view on that is I don't think so. The simple part is that the independentistas haven't told us a nickel's worth about what they think an independent Guam should look like. And that's enough for me. I'm not one to buy a pig in a poke, be be swayed by a lot of emotional swan songs that things would be a lot better if Guam were independent. I have stated on more than one occasion that Guam became an imperialist nation, probably before, but certainly in 1898. Guam is part of the American Empire, and it's been, being in the American Empire has been a pretty good thing for Guam when you compare it to similarly located places around the world. And I think our best destiny lies in staying in the empire and trying to carve out the best possible situation within that empire that we can. So I'll give Paul Zerzan credit once again for bringing up a subject that needs to be talked about a little bit more. So moving on and meet the press to the Post. Here's what the Post says. Another lower ethical bar is displayed. The government of Guam once again lowered the bar on ethical standards for a public servant. Ovita Nauta, a Gov Guam Administrative Services officer at the Department of Corrections, will keep her job even after she pleaded guilty to official misconduct. She won't go to prison. She was sentenced to 1 year of suspended prison time, but will have to pay $7,600 in restitution for the checks. Hers wasn't a simple case of issuing checks without funds. A grand jury also indicted her on charges of theft of property held in trust after money that she had access to went missing from the Guam Police Department, where she was an administrative service officer. She tried to repay the money by issuing checks which bounced. According to court documents, Nauta will keep her $67,000 a year job at DOC despite her conviction. DOC Director Tony Lamarena, said no action will be taken against her because the issue happened at a different department, and the court already has imposed its punishment. Lamarena added that Nauta is doing a, quote, outstanding job at DOC. Nauta was previously nominated for the Gov Guam Mag Pro Award under the category Customer Service Professional of the Year. Customer service at the Department of Corrections. That causes my imagination to start working pretty hard. Even after the funds went missing at GPD, working within Gov Guam is supposed to hold a supervisor like Nauta to a higher ethical standard. Instead of replacing Nauta and giving her the job to an honest, hardworking person, she is being held in high esteem. There have been many other instances of clear breaches of public trust, including the illegal pay raises that are now costing taxpayers millions of dollars, even when a legal opinion stated that the retroactive pay raises were illegal. No one was ever held accountable for it. At the height of public protest over the issue, a search for the special prosecutor who was supposed to investigate and possibly file charges against those who broke the law was commenced. Later on, the selection of a special prosecutor got buried in procedural quicksand, and the issue conveniently faded. Sorry, folks, there was no Doug Moylan in those days. More recently, the Federal Communications Commission expressed concern that more than $4 million in 911 funds had been diverted for other purposes. No one in Gov Guam was held publicly accountable for that either. It's clear that Gov Guam generally doesn't care about holding its officials accountable. We got a short break here.
Guam Regional Medical City. We bring the healthcare advances of the world directly to you. We are an acute care hospital that complements your needs with our robust outpatient specialty clinics. From preventative care to critical care, we strive for consistent excellence at GRMC. Our core philosophy is where patients are partners, which means we work as a team to make a healthier version of you. For more information about GRMC, visit us at grmc.gu.
So here I am back again. I had to get up and get my blue pencil. I don't think it's going to be too much of a surprise as to which editorial gets the blue star today, but there's as bad a picture as this editorial paints. It's actually a little bit worse because there are DOA personnel rules as to disciplinary offenses and what a person can be fired for. And it's at 11.303 of Title II of the Guam of the GARR, if you want to go take a look at it yourself. A department head may remove an employee for such misconduct which affects the efficiency of the service. The authorized causes for adverse action include, but are not limited to the following: G, conviction for a crime; J, misuse or theft of government property. I showed you a statute last week in Title IV that says that if a government employee is charged with a crime, he has 72 hours to give his or her boss notice that he's been charged with a crime, and that the so-called 60-day clock doesn't start running until that notice is provided. So what that means is this, that La Morena has the ability to fire Ovita Nauta right now, to at least take disciplinary action against her because she has been convicted of a crime. Well, that's pretty bad. Instead of taking disciplinary against someone who has stolen from the government and gotten caught stealing from the government, you kind of get this mental image of he's bought a nice new desk for her. Or redecorated her office, because after all, she was the MagPro Customer Service Person of the Year, etc. She's knocking down over 60 grand. But it's even worse than that, because one of the grounds for discipline is misuse or theft of government property. So when Ovita Nauta was indicted for stealing money from the police department and then writing a bad check to try to pay it back, that was in the indictment. She could have been fired right then. La Morena could have fired her. Now, he said, well, yeah, but that happened at a different agency. It doesn't matter. The offense is against the government, not against a particular agency. And as the rule says, misconduct which affects the efficiency of the service. Well, having people working for the government of Guam that steal from the government of Guam definitely affects the efficiency of the service. So La Morena could have fired her then. He didn't. He just let it go. And he could have fired her now when she's actually convicted, pled guilty. He could fire her now. Instead, he lionizes her. So what kind of example does this set for employees that want to do the right thing, that want to work hard, that place a high value on honesty and not stealing from the government? It just sends a horrible signal, especially when she stole from the cops, from a law enforcement agency. So if we were to use Ovita Nauta as our model, the way to do it would be to continually move the Ovita Nauta, Tony La Morena two-step. Be employed at an agency, steal from the agency, but before you get caught, transfer to another agency. And then if you get caught, the new agency will say, well, it didn't happen here, so there's nothing I could do. Boy, it's... I I wonder if either one of those two people would be available for a seat at the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, because it seems like the attitude that we see displayed here would work very well at the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. So just bad news all the way around on this one. And of course, the Post hit the nail smack on the head. So I'm going to give the Post a couple of things. I'm giving the Post a coveted blue star, and I'm also marking a $sign on their certificate, saying, you know, how can the government of Guam ever get ahead when we honor people who steal from the government of Guam? So that's Zemi Ikatni, Meet the Press for today. I'm going to put that folder away and grab the card. And the first item on the card is Hirono versus Collins. So I think we're finally going to put away the Judge Kavanaugh matter. I've just got a couple of things to say. I've already done my mea culpas as far as Tom Ford is concerned, and I've offered some restitution. That is a lifetime membership in the Tall Tales Nation Citizenship Club. So every year when dues come due, I'm going to waive those dues. But you'll remember Maisie Hirono, who I complimented for not beating around the bush and coming out at the very beginning when the question was, well, who are you going to believe, Christine Ford or Brett Kavanaugh? And Maisie Hirono told it like it was. How can I believe this guy when I've looked at his record and how he's probably going to rule on women's reproductive rights, which is the long way of saying abortion. So Maisie said that, you know, if he's not pro-abortion, how could he possibly be telling the truth? So so the swing vote here, of course, was Susan Collins from Maine, a liberal Republican senator, a pro-abortion Republican, believe it or not. And she is the one that tipped the scales. She did a 45-minute speech explaining her vote. I didn't listen to it, but I read it all. And the only criticism that I had of Susan Collins' speech is that I wished I had been able to lay it out as clearly and correctly as Susan did. And Susan comes down to the point, well, okay, you could believe either or both, but there's no substantiation for one, so I've got to go with Brett Kavanaugh. And when she said that, of course, Maisie Hirono comes back on Sunday, criticized Senator Collins from Maine, saying that she believes Christine Blasey Ford believes she was assaulted by Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh, saying the remarks were insulting. In other words, Collins's remarks were insulting. To say that she thinks that Dr. Ford thinks that she was assaulted, what is that? Is she mistaken? Hirono said during an appearance on CNN's State of the Union. Hirono added, and then Hirono goes through all of the things that she thought were in Ford's favor, and once again said that Collins' remarks were insulting. Collins said herself that she heard from so many. Collins said herself that she's heard from so many survivors from her state and elsewhere. All of us have been hearing stories and accounts from survivors going back many, many years, and where they kept all these painful, traumatic accounts of themselves, Hirono said. So since they heard from all of these other people, obviously they have to believe Christine Ford. That's kind of the impact there. Hirono also pushed back on Collins' claim that there was no corroboration of Ford's accusations. And then finally, Hirono added that there was no corroboration of Kavanaugh's assertion that he didn't assault Ford. Oh, now that's a mouthful. Let's try that again. Hirono added that there was no corroboration of Kavanaugh's assertion that she didn't assault Ford. It takes a special kind of mind to engage in that kind of logic. I have a really good article here from John Turley that came out just this afternoon. I may go into that after our big halftime show here on Tall Tales, or I may skip to the next item on the card, which is CLTC versus responsibility. I'm going to have to check with the program director of back in the Tall Tales think tank to help me make that decision, but I would succumb to anything that you post here on Facebook if you are of a mind to. Thank you.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Tropical Storm Michael picking up strength as it heads into the Gulf of Mexico. I'm Ann Carrick, Fox News. The storm expected to become a hurricane tonight. Florida Governor Rick Scott speaking on Sunday.
Today, I declared a state of emergency in 26 Florida counties across the Florida Panhandle and Big Bend in preparation for Tropical Storm Michael. This allows resources to move quickly to every community in the storm's path as we get prepared.
Michael likely to hit the Florida Panhandle on Wednesday. 20 people are dead following an SUV limousine crash in Schoharie, New York, west of Albany. Police say 2 pedestrians and everyone in the limo, including the driver, died when the Ford Excursion limo went through a stop sign and hit a parked vehicle at the Apple Barrel Country Store.
The store manager says the car was traveling probably over 60 miles per hour. The store is a popular stop this time of year for tourists looking for apple picking and enjoying the foliage.
Fox's Brian Yenes. The limo was headed to a birthday party. Police and the NTSB are investigating. Love him or hate him, Brett Kavanaugh now is a Supreme Court justice. The Senate narrowly confirming him Saturday after a bruising battle, including allegations of sexual misconduct and another FBI investigation. Fox's Kevin Cork outlines the cases Kavanaugh is likely to hear this coming week.
One involving product liability that I think a lot of people will find very fascinating, and there's another involving illegal immigration, and I want you to be sure to keep your eye on the calendar for Wednesday, because that's when Justice Kavanaugh and the other justices will have an opportunity to consider which undocumented immigrants can be detained during deportation proceedings.
Kavanaugh replaces retiring Justice Anthony Kennedy, long considered the Supreme Court's swing vote. A formal ceremony is planned at the White House today. This is Fox News.
For over 30 years, Sanford Technology Group has been helping companies throughout Guam and Micronesia with their payroll, time and attendance, networking, and other information technology services. Our online integrated payroll and time and attendance solution provides the workforce management tools and expertise to make your business more efficient and employee-friendly. For more information, visit Sanford Technology at 335 South Marine Corps Drive or call us at 647-0220 to schedule a demo today.
The president heads to Orlando today, but it's not a campaign rally.
President Trump will travel to Orlando today to speak in front of the International Association of Chiefs of Police. It's billed as the largest gathering of police leaders in the world and is both a convention and expo. Unlike many of the president's recent appearances around the nation, this is not a campaign rally today, and the general public will not be admitted to hear him speak. The visit is considered to be officially a presidential event. In Miami, Eben Brown, Fox News.
It's Columbus Day, at least in some parts of the country.
President Franklin Roosevelt proclaimed October 12th officially Columbus Day back in 1937 to celebrate the man who sailed the ocean blue in 1492 and discovered America. But he didn't really discover America. In fact, he never even set foot in North America. His exploration was limited to the Caribbean islands. And as for discovering anything, well, native peoples were already living there, as we know. So dozens of cities and counties have chosen to instead celebrate Columbus Day as Indigenous Peoples Day. It seems to have started in Berkeley in the early 90s when the city council voted to honor native people after an international plan to celebrate Columbus fell apart. But a few years before that, South Dakota decided to rename it Native American Day. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
The Big Apple seems to have a fruit problem. 5 years ago, New York City planned to turn hundreds of thousands of tons of food and grass clippings into compost, gas, or electricity. The expansion now on hold due to lack of participation. The city collected only about 13,000 tons last year from residents and found the 3.5 million people in the program only separated about 10% of potential scraps. Officials still want to expand the program to all 8.5 million New York City residents. Right now, the focus is on efficiency and participation. I'm Ann Carrick, and this is Fox News.
Morrico Equipment stocks and sells a wide variety of heavy equipment parts. They sell heavy equipment parts to keep Guam trucking, building, digging, pushing, grading, protecting, and patrolling. If you are looking for service, repair, or replacement parts for your heavy equipment, call Morrico on EPOW Road at 649-1946 or click on morricoequipment.com. Morrico Equipment, heavy equipment parts.
The Bob Klitsky Show is brought to you by Sanford Technology Group. STG, delivering service that can't be beat.
Grilled salmon, petite sirloin. Can't decide.
What are you doing?
Making my top 10 list of favorite dishes at Ruby Tuesday.
You really need to get a hobby.
But I can't decide. There's no way I can narrow down so many classic dishes to just 10.
Then it's a good thing Ruby Tuesday did it for you.
It's the all-time favorites menu at Ruby Tuesday Guam. We took our most popular dishes and put them on one great menu for only $14.99. Hickory pork chop, Parmesan shrimp pasta, prime loco moco. 10 top sellers at one great price. Pick your favorite for a limited time at Ruby Tuesday Guam.
Life is too short to be isolated from the people you love. Hearing loss is the invisible disability. The experts at Guam Hearing Doctors have solutions.
Guam Regional Medical City. We bring the healthcare advances of the world directly to you. We are an acute care hospital that complements your needs with our robust outpatient specialty clinics. From preventative care to critical care, we strive for consistent excellence at GRMC. Our core philosophy is where patients are partners, which means we work as a team to make a healthier version of you. For more information about GRMC, visit us at grmc.gu.
Ken, I know you really enjoy that big halftime show that we have every day at 5, and I suspect you hardly ever miss it, right?
Definitely not. I was trying to call. The reason I didn't call in earlier in your show is because Docomo had to reset my phone. It wasn't working. But I wanted to call in because you raised so many good points. I don't know where to begin. But I'll go back to the Democratic Party press release, if that's okay with you.
Okay. Is that the one where I get to be the sinister man behind the scenes, kind of searching for more power?
Well, it's obvious to those of us who know and love you. You know, that's your ultimate goal.
Okay.
Planet Earth sovereign. But it goes back to the Democratic Party issued a press release that was so undemocratic, I found it hard to believe that somebody claiming to be a Democratic Party would issue a document like that basically poo-pawed the people. It basically said the people of Guam need us to determine who they should vote for because they're not capable of making that decision themselves. And that's why the writing campaign got started from the beginning, because the way the political parties have structured this primary process, they control it. We pay for it, but they control it. And since they get to control it, they get to decide who gets to run for office and who doesn't. And that's the part where the people are being cheated, because we have a lot of good people here on this island that would make good candidates. And as you know, I tried to talk a lot of people into running for various offices for this election, but most of them turned me down, saying that without the support of the party, it would be a waste of their effort. And this is what we ended up with. We ended up with two candidates so unpopular. I mean, let's begin with the Democratic candidate spent more money than all other candidates combined and barely got enough votes to call it a lead. And you can only call it a lead since the Guam Election Commission refuses to count 907 votes. That could have changed the whole race right there, not just at the gubernatorial level, but down the line as well. And then we have a Republican candidate so unpopular that the least popular Democratic candidate for senator scored almost twice as many votes as he got. And so now the political parties are saying, these are our champions, pick one. So instead of, going into a contest where we're trying to pick the best of the best, we're trying to pick the least of the worst. And when did that become a standard to aspire to? Kind of like this situation with the service officer over at the prison. We as a people should expect more from our elected and appointed and government officials, because we put them in positions of great power. And all too often, like in the case of this administrative service officer, when they abuse that power, the punishment should be swift. But instead, it's almost like she got promoted and a raise for abusing her power and her obligations to the public. That's what's driving this grassroots campaign, because people are tired of this. We have a population that struggles from paycheck to paycheck, and yet in the face of imminent collapse in government in Guam at the beginning of this year, remember Eddie Calvo came out and told us how great things are. By the way, if we don't raise taxes, the government will collapse. And then instead of reducing operations, they actually passed the first $1 billion budget. But look who's paying for it. A population that's made up 80% or more of people who are struggling from paycheck to paycheck just to make ends meet. So that's why we're seeing the power behind this grassroots campaign. And it's getting stronger every day. And that's why the Democratic Party is coming out and what would be the proper ways? They're trying hard to convince the people that they know the way. And the people aren't buying it.
So how is the write-in campaign going, Ken?
It is going extremely well. We see a lot of more people getting involved. We're getting a lot of more people coming over to us from other campaigns. So that was refreshing. We're going to be starting our first round of village events next week. We're going to be doing live streams of some of these meetings on Facebook and YouTube. So we're getting the word out there. We just put out over this past weekend, we put out 2,000 cards. They're business cards on how to vote for the write-in. And they were gone. We're printing more. They went very fast. And so we're seeing more people talking about the write-in candidate. And even this morning on Ray's show, he's starting to see that this may be real after all, because he's starting to see the kind of activity with the wave that he considers makes it a campaign. So we're trying to get more of those under our belt, but we're all new to this. This is a community-driven effort, not a political party-driven effort. And so what we're doing from that point of view is we're doing things that we feel are more important as a community, and things that we're not doing things we don't feel make a difference. Like, you don't see us driving around with pickup trucks with signs. We put signs up. I think we've probably got more signs up right now than many of the candidates, now that I think about it. So we're starting to gain more momentum, and as more people look at the information we're providing out, that momentum is getting stronger.
Okay, that's a good analysis. Now, I know from listening to my favorite early morning radio show that a couple of people were out waving this morning in front of McDonald's. You know anything about that, Ken?
I heard about it, and I was trying to get over there to see it for myself, but by the time I got there, the wave was gone.
Okay.
So hopefully there'll be another wave, and hopefully they'll start posting these events on their page so that people can find out what they're doing, because we post all the events that we're doing on our pages. I think it'd be nice if they posted the things that they're doing on their pages as well, just to make it easier for people to find out what's going on. Again, that's because of the restrictions we're having to deal with because of the way the laws are written. But they're not insurmountable, as we are finding. We're very excited about the level of support that we're getting in the community, and I think the Democratic press release is in response to the level of support they see we're getting in the community, and they're trying to temper it down. But if anything, I think their press release strengthened us, and I hope they issue more of the same, to be honest.
Okay, so let's switch to football here for a second, Ken. I'd like to call an audible since you're on the phone.
Okay.
Change the signals here. Mike St. Nicholas wrote an op-ed piece on Sunday in favor of waste to energy, and a local businessman named Tom Hertzlet was featured in a Post article advocating the same thing. So I was going to have an item on the card, St. Nicholas and Hertzlet versus Ken Leon Guerrero. But since I've got you on the phone, would you like to comment on either of those two items?
Well, yes, I would. I don't remember them in detail, but I remember them generally. Now, the reason why I have been against waste to energy wasn't so much against the concept as it was against the pork barrel contract that was written. And even though it was void, and this is another example of politicians and well-connected political insiders hijacking public assets, the original contract was void back in 82 or 83 when the original contractor, which I believe was a company called international electricity and energy systems, failed to complete the requirements of the agreement. The agreement was a three-stage contract. Stage 1, and then you get a renewal. Stage 2, you complete it, you get another renewal, and if you complete the requirements of stage 3, then you get the 20-year contract. Well, they never finished stage 1. They were found in default. The GITA even sued them in court for recovery of money that they failed to pay back, and they terminated the contract with prejudice. Yet we're still in court right now, and GRRP has got a lawsuit against government of Guam for not issuing a new contract that would be legal in the spirit of the old contract. So the reason I'm against this is as long as that contract is hanging around, well-connected political insiders are going to turn it into the next Guam Y2K and get, at a minimum, $20 million. But the way this contract is written, government of Guam will assume the obligation to issue $350 million of bonds and the funds to be placed into an account to be managed by GRRP. So now, if that wasn't on the table, then some form of waste reduction technology would make sense. And I say waste reduction because waste reduction is about 10% of the cost of waste to energy. And as they have learned in Hawaii, waste energy is not cost efficient. Honolulu loses millions of dollars a year buying electricity from the waste energy plants because those plants are very expensive, and then they cost a lot of money to run. But there is waste reduction technology that's about 10% of the cost of a waste to energy plant. So if we went to waste reduction, and a perfect example is out on Kwajalein, the Navy has a waste reduction facility that takes all the waste on the military base there and reduces it down to less than 10%. And that was like a $3 million plant, as opposed to the $350 million plant that GRRP is proposing to the taxpayers of Guam. If we had, like two or three $3 million plants, that would be sufficient to handle all the waste on Guam. But there's no money in it. You know what I mean? Other than the taxpayers saving $23 million on this next cell. But what do politically well-connected insiders get? If the government went out and spent $3 million on a technology that would reduce the island's 40 tons a day down to 3 tons a day, where's the money for the well-connected insiders?
So, in summary, Ken, you think that the idea of waste reduction, perhaps by burning, is not a bad idea. You're still undecided about generating electricity from the heat created thereby, but your major objection right now is the fact that we're apparently stuck with a bad deal that goes back a long, long time. And finally, borrowing a page from Paul Zerzan's book, maybe we need to get people acquainted with the meaning of the word void here, because it seems that contract being void means very little to its proponents. And at the Chamorro Land Trust, the fact that a lease may be void is kind of an interesting technicality that can easily be brushed aside, correct?
Correct. I mean, we see that in Chamorro Land Trust all over the place. I mean, just go back to the Menhita Farms. 50 acres of, there's a bill pending before the legislature that Tom Atta is going to try to push out before he leaves, that takes 50 acres of Chamorro Land Trust land and transfers it over to relatives of the governor and gives them the power to subdivide and sublease. Well, what makes more sense on that 50 acres of land? growing vegetables half a mile from Anderson Main Gate, 1 mile from the Marine Main Gate, or building luxury townhomes? Which is more profitable?
Okay, well, thanks a lot for calling in, Ken, and I guess I kind of surprised you by that with that audible, but you are a Tall Tales Life member, so you can handle just about anything that comes at you on Tall Tales, correct?
Yes, but I want to tell you what you do on this show is very, very valuable to the community, because I can't tell you how many people have told me how much they are learning about government processes, and government here on Guam, listening to your show. It's like an on-air civics class. And since we all know to quit teaching civics in school, I can't even remember when they stopped teaching it, but a long time ago. This is a course that everybody who pays taxes needs to learn, because it's our tax dollars that fuel this government. And we went from $700 million in 2014 to $1 billion in 2018. Well, guess what? Our population didn't go up. We had about 74,000 tax filers, which is businesses and people, in 2014. We're up to 78,000 in 2018. So we had an increase in tax filers of 4,000. We had a budget that went from 700 to $1 billion. So that's where the disconnect is. Government, the days when government could do everything for everybody are gone. But the government keeps acting like its mandate is to keep raising as much money as we possibly can squeeze out of this small population and spend it before the end of the fiscal year so we won't have to give it back. That has to change, and that's what we hope to change with this write-in process. Because once we elect a gubernatorial team that owes its incumbency to the people that got it in, as opposed to the political parties and the side deals they cut to get them in, I think we should have a much better government going forward.
Okay, Ken. Well, thanks very much for chiming in. As your calls always add something to the program. I appreciate it. Talk to you later.
Thank you for letting me speak.
Okay. So Ken Leon Guerrero, a staunch opponent of waste energy back in the time when it was so connected with Wagner Gurgis. That was then, and this is now. I guess he's perhaps modified his objection to not the technology so much as what he sees as one of the C words, cronyism, corruption, something like that. So I noticed that Facebook comments have kind of heated up a little bit. Now here's something from Thomas Tenorio Bernardo. If we really want to get recognition, we should have all GovGuam agencies and buildings stop raising or displaying the U.S. flag, and of course stop playing the national anthem at the beginning of public events. And he says, just a thought, mind you. Recognition, I wonder, the same kind of recognition that, what's the kneeler's name? Kaepernick? I don't know. You're going to have you're going to have to explain that one a little bit more before you would get a Tall Tales endorsement on that one, Thomas. I think when you say just a thought, mind you, perhaps you're just tossing it out as a point for discussion. Let's see, is there anything else I need to talk about here on Facebook comments? Jesse Limtiaco, since Guam is an unincorporated territory, it has only those powers conferred upon it by Congress. That's pretty well settled. The same Congress where the people have no meaningful representation. That's a truism. Okay, well, I'll study the Facebook comments a little bit more, and then after the break, we'll go into the Chamorro Land Trust Act.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training every morning on The Ray Gibson Show.
Are you right now not as successful as you think you should be or could be? I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, we'll talk about what to do about that.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point by Jerry Roberts at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts on The Ray Gibson Show on 93.3 The Point. You know, sometimes when someone smacks one off the center field wall in Wrigley Field, the ball actually gets stuck in the ivy that grows on that wall. So you legal minds out there would know what to call that when it happens. Do you know, Real Joe Cruz?
No, sir, I do
It's
not.
a ground rule double. Yeah. So the runner just advances to second base, and there he stays while the outfielder is digging around in the ivy trying to get that ball out. So the Sunday Post ran a story that the CLTC sends resolution on voidable land leases. So they want to they've already said that the voidable leases are no longer void, but they want the legislature to recognize them, and I don't know what else. Maybe Dennis Rodriguez, since he is so good at the acrobatic theory of legislative drafting. And then they also want the legislature to take the leases that are void because of skipping and unvoid them to make them into real valid leases. I suppose there's a word that you could use to indicate the creation of a situation that was no longer void. I don't know what it is, but we seem to run into, we should have it here because we keep running into this all the time where things are void, but we want to do that. We want to do it anyhow, even though the thing is void. So I went back and looked at some of the old stories here, primarily KOAM. Here's one from April 30. At the CLTC board meeting today, board chair Pika Feharan saying land management employees involved in getting CLTC leases should have the process put before the board for transparency. First of all, I don't know what board she's talking about. Maybe the ironing board.
But there's a commission, so the members of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission make up the commission. It's not a board, but he uses the word board, saying that land management employees involved in getting CLTC leases should have the process put before the board for transparency. In other words, if you are a Chamorro Land Trust employee or a land management employee and you wound up with one of those leases, I think what she's saying is, well, let's take a look and let's see how you got it. CLTC Land Management Administrator Margarita Borja, whose daughter and first cousin got lots in Barragata Heights, saying they've tried to call applicants, but in her words, 80% of CLTC applicant contact information is not updated. This comes from one of the Land Trust Commission meetings, by the way. But she had no trouble getting hold of her sister, who was living off island. Borja facilitating a switch in line. Her sister, a 1995 applicant, switching places with her daughter, Mariah, a 2016 applicant. Now we just want to sweep this under the rug. There's no, the government made a mistake, so there's no sense punishing these employees of land management for the things that they did. And then there's a quote, my sister, she's relocated off island. She's not looking at coming back anytime soon, Borja said. So she just said, hey, what if I do come back? How can I still get some property? Well, I can tell you the answer to that. Just ask your relative that works at the land management. Anyhow, going on with a quote, that's why they switched date and times. My daughter is ready to go and build her home and stuff today, and she's unable to with a 2016 application. With a 1995 application, my sister decided to switch application dates so that my daughter's able to build her home. If that didn't happen, I'm sure nothing's going to happen. I'm not even sure she'd be able to still get property because there's still conditions she needs to meet. I saw this on television, and I suspect many people out there in our international radio listening audience saw this on television. So how do you feel then about the commission saying, well, we'll just ask the legislature to validate all of these void leases like Mariah's? Goes on, the board questioning where the rules and regulations state applicants can switch places in line. Legal counsel struggling to find exactly which part of the law allows that. That's what you would have seen if you'd watched. That's another thing we'll look into. The AG will look into. Our rules and regs do not specifically state it, and our legal counsel stated it's an administrative practice. Land Management Director Michael Borja burning up in the hot seat, admitting he signed off on a lot for his sister. She lives off island and he handles her affairs through a power of attorney. So Borja signed off on at least twice as lessee and as director. Agency employees and their immediate family members appearing to get the hookup as thousands who have waited decades for their CLTC lots scratch their heads. Senator Frank Uggan called attention to the paving of an access road leading to the lots. DPW clearing land without permits from EPA. After KOM's news investigative report blew the issue wide open, Uggan called on Land Committee Chair Senator Tom Atta to hold an oversight hearing of the CLTC. Uggan saying the awarding of leases to DLM employees and their relatives brought this issue to the tipping point. That adds fuel to the fire, so I think there should be an oversight of the Chamorro Land Trust. Absolutely. Uggan saying there's a sense of urgency, but Atta questioning Uggan's motives. And here's what Atta said. Sense of urgency? Because it's an election year? That's what Tom Atta said. Now, this is the same Tom Atta that's co-chairman of Lulian Guerrero's gubernatorial campaign. And it's the same Tom Atta who took a bill authored by Senator Frank Hogan and introduced last May that would have straightened this whole mess out. It's the one where the governor would appoint a retired judge. No more, the leases would be frozen. Rules and regulations which would be promulgated, and that's never happened. And this whole mess would have been looked into and straightened out, and discipline would have been had on those who needed discipline. But Tom Atta didn't even let that bill come to a hearing. On July 13th, he summarily canceled the hearing for no good reason and didn't reschedule it, and that bill has never had a hearing. Now he's saying, well, when I get that bill from the Land Trust Commission, when I get that resolution, I'll take a look at it. Now, this is not what Tom Atta is saying, but this is what I'm saying. I'll take a look at it, and I'll hold the rug up if someone else will sweep this mess underneath it. Because that's exactly what we're witnessing here. KUAM for, let's see, May 9. Oh, wait a minute, I think I've already done that one. KUM and KUAM, oh, that's a new one. Just bear with me for a second while I sift through these papers. Here's May 3. Department of Land Management Director Michael Spora was shocked when we told him the results of our investigation into who was awarded leases for lots in Barragata Heights. Cross-referencing staffing patterns for land management and the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, we were able to find out several employees of the agency and their immediate families received CLTC lots in Barragata Heights. Land management employees Glenn A. and Matthew Leon Guerrero received CLTC lots in Barragata Heights. And by the way, you know, one of those lots was appraised at $700,000. It doesn't stop there. Leon Guerrero's wife also received a lot. A's daughter, Chelsea, received a lot, and DLM employee Stephanie Duenas' daughter, Abreen, also received a lot in Barragata Heights. Land management employee Albert Pasqua's son, Gilbert, also received a lot. And if that wasn't enough to make you say, both of land management employee Catherine Berseman's sons received lots. And land administrator Margarita Vergara Borja's daughter, Mariah Borja, also received a lot after she switched places with someone on the waiting list. Most of this information is news to Borja, and he admits it does look like land management employees and their families are getting the hookup. Man, Ed, Michael Borja's got a mind like a steel trap, doesn't he? Yes, I guess you could make an assumption that it's beyond coincidence, but I don't think there's a concerted effort to try to get people the best property, Borja said. Come on. Borja says all people who got lots in the area have applied since 1995, but a review of information from Borja's office shows that's not exactly the case. And he says preferential treatment was not the reason for DPW clearing an access road to the property, although he did sign off on every single lease for the area, even though there are bigger land trust areas without access roads. And we know that Borja did not have the authority to sign off on the leases. Now, in another release I read, he said, we knew about all these things, but it had been going on for a long time, so we just kind of went with it. Borja says he wasn't aware there were so many relatives of agency employees getting land. Several of them I knew about, Borja said. Some of them I wasn't familiar with the relationships to an employee in the department. Now, again, I remember seeing on television Pika Farron, the chairman of the commission, ordering that every employee provide a document that showed exactly who they were related to. Now, I don't know how the chairman of a board or commission has that authority, but that's what she said. I guess that was before she got the idea that, well, we'll just ask the legislature to sweep it all under the rug. After discussing the issue for over an hour, Bora finally admitted that he signed off on one of his own family members' lease. I did have a relative that got a lot in the area, Bora said. How closely related to you? My sister, Bora said. Bora confirming his sister, Catherine Bora, received a CLTC lot in the area. Just a coincidence. Wow. It's kind of like pay no attention to that little man behind the curtain that's making all these things happen, right? Her name came up on the list, Bora says. Was it done properly? Yes, I think so. Do you think you should have recused yourself from it? Probably, Bora said. Why didn't you? It was convenience. Bora sticking to his story, saying the CLTC protocols were followed when it comes to the first come, first served practice. He says if names on the list were skipped, it's simply because their contact information was not updated. He assures those who have been waiting for years for CLTC land, you don't have to have a connect to get taken care of. Looks like it sure does help, though. Boris says he will have a sit-down with his staff, and they have some splaining to do, even though he says he signed off on his own sister's lease. He may not be taken seriously. I don't take him seriously. I don't take any of this seriously. I think it's a huge scam, and it's a scam on all of these poor rascals that signed up for Chamorro Land Trust leases in good faith, thinking that the program would be run in a honorable, honest fashion. It just shows you how wrong you can be and how a good sense of cynicism ordinarily will stand almost anyone in good stead. None of this stuff about Boris surprises me because I saw with my own eyes his employee, Andrew Santos, alter a certificate of title, and then I saw Michael Bora, and then I saw him do it again, and I saw Michael Bora say that it had to be corrected by filing a petition in court, and that he had a petition ready to go, just ready to tell the Attorney General to file it. He didn't do that. He found a workaround, no surprise. And when I did a sunshine law request asking to see that petition, there was none. So how do these things how are these things allowed to keep happening? That's the real question. It just goes on and on and on and on. And I've talked about Frank Uggan's bill before. Frank Uggan introduced a bill in May that if it had been given a hearing and passed, we probably wouldn't be talking about this stuff now because the problem would have been solved. But of course, the problem with that was that it would have appeared that Frank Uggan was doing a good job as a senator. And of course, a lot of folks don't understand this, but in the political world, one of the most effective things a politician can do if he's running for office is to do a good job for the people. That beats going to the dead. It beats out hiring large staffs, fancy offices, footmen, manservants, maidservants, all the rest of that stuff. So that would have been the reason, I suppose, that the co-chairman of Leon Guerrero's campaign didn't want Frank's bill to go forward. And as I mentioned earlier, now he's ready, apparently, to hold up the rug if he can get somebody else to sweep the mess that the Chamorro Land Trust is under that rug. There's no sense going back and looking all at these people that got their lands in at least a shady, if not illegal way. There's no sense asking that commission to actually do its job. One of its jobs, by the way, is to promulgate rules and regulations, because rules and regs were never promulgated. Now, they've been sitting on this since April and doing nothing. Almost time for, yeah, there it is. Good. I need to catch my breath a little bit. This thing is such an aggravation. So I'm going to study the Facebook comments and figure out how we're going to take the program down the home stretch here.
It's important to have claims process that works for you. At Guahan Insurance Services, we make things simple and convenient. Same door you walk in to purchase your insurance is the same door you open to file your claim. We can't pretend that the car insurance claims process is fun, but we can promise a hassle-free and speedy recovery without any runarounds. For your home, auto, and business insurance, visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center on Marine Corps Drive in Tamuning. Don't forget to like us on Facebook or give us a call at 475-1162 or text 929-SAVE. That's 929-7283.
So here we are in the home stretch. Just 10 more minutes till I hear the plaintive strains of Ravel's Bolero, my favorite song at this time of the day. Let's see. Tedo says he should get lots of airtime rolling the dice with his help, Camp, or just overall hurt the Democratic Party. I'll wait for who truly decides an election day, and will respect the wishes of the people, not the parties running. And let's see, I've already read Tomas Bernardo's comment, and Ken Leanne Guerrero, 50% of Lou's campaign came out of her pocket. Don't see you say anything about that. Earlier, Jesse Limtiaco said that he was a major contributor to his own organization's campaign, and that's Ken's comeback. Tedo says, call Jesse Ventura. Better go pesca. Too much wow going around here this election. Life goes on after election, bills to pay, animals to feed. So no pescador, how, Tedo? Jesse Limtiaco then says, did she spend more than she brought in? And let's see. Jose Martinez says the in-crowd is just an elitist, exclusive, and superficial now as it was in high school. Tedo says land management play the Johnny Sablon song, Shame and Scandal in the Family. Yeah, I know that song. It's a little different kind of shame and scandal, but that seems to be the case. And then Daryl, I guess Daryl is... helped his father today, and it's got a little time to get on Tall Tales here. Don't forget that elsewhere in the CLTC law, the commission can lease lands to raise funds to survey and improve new subdivisions to eligible applicants. Barragata Heights land should have been used for this, not given away. Absolutely right, Daryl. And that reminds me of something else. I can't put my finger on it, but I've heard some chatter about some of the commercial leases that the Chamorro Land Trust Commission entered into that benefited some people far more than than it benefited the people of Guam. There's all the more reason that we need to go into that whole Chamorro Land Trust Commission, the employees and all these transactions, and find out who did what to whom, why it was done, and who got what out of the whole deal instead of just shrugging it off to the legislature. The whole thing, as Ray said the other day when he had the chairman of the Land Trust Commission on his program, it's fishy. And Tedo, I guess that's maybe what you're talking about with your pesca. So, yeah, it is fishy, and I hate to see us just let it go. So I've got just a couple of minutes here to go. I'm going to deviate. I'm going to go way down the card here and pick up on something that I can deal with in just a few minutes before the end of the program. The Post ran a picture on October 8 of hundreds of people come out to participate in Life Chain 2018, a pro-life wave and rally sponsored by the Catholic Pro-Life Committee. The wave was held at 7 locations around the island to coincide with Respect Life Sunday, the first Sunday in October. So the A word, it's a kind of ironic that in this election season, the A word hasn't been used more prominently. When I say the A word, abortion, because I know nobody likes to use that word. You know, we want to talk about pro-life and pro-choice, etc. We don't want to use the word abortion because abortion reminds us that abortion is a medical procedure to end the life of a child in the womb. And that just doesn't sit very well among polite company. There must be something that we could talk about that's not quite so graphic. So that ran in nice contrast with a PDN Sunday story. Legislative candidates discuss approaches to women's rights at the AAUW forum. Women's rights. Now, women's rights can, not always, but it can be a euphemism for women's reproductive health rights. And what that means is abortion, like something like abortion on demand. So near the end of the story, we find this. The protection of reproductive rights is a topic that many women are concerned about nationally. Candidates were asked what they would do to ensure women on Guam have legal access to safe abortions. Every woman should have the right to safe abortions, but I ultimately think we should be looking at how we can reduce the need for them in the first place, said Democrat Germaine Alerta. Both Lee and Senator Amanda Shelton said they would not direct any resources to opposing a federal ruling. I don't know what resources they would have to direct towards a federal ruling. Now, I don't know if we're caught up with back with Mazie Hirono here, but anyhow, there were. Let's see, how many of them were there? The editorial doesn't say how many of them there were. I got to do a little more research on this and find out how many were there. And I wonder, let's see, Democrat candidate Sabina Paris was there. Jack Hattig, Republican Jose San Augustine. We have an abundance of Jose San Augustines. This Jose San Augustine is the former director of corrections. Tina Rose Munya Barnes was there. Democrat Lacia Casil was there. Republican James Moylan was there. Now, am I to assume that since the headline, well, it doesn't actually. Am I to assume that in the absence of a quotation in this article that the people whose names I mentioned are pro-abortion or anti-abortion? I think it would be very nice if you were one of the people whose names I mentioned. You could call or post on Facebook here and tell us where you stand on anti-abortion, which to me is an extremely important issue in this campaign. I don't know where Ray Tenorio stands on abortion. It's pretty clear where Lulian Guerrero stands on abortion. She is very pro-abortion, and given that all of the moaning and groaning over a conservative on the Supreme Court, I suppose one could assume or one could hypothesize that states and territories will once again gain control over the criminal law in their own jurisdiction when it comes to abortion. So it would be very helpful to know how these senatorial candidates line up on the issue of abortion. And if you want a soapbox candidates, if you want a place to express your views, this is exactly the right place. We'll give you some airtime. We'll give you Facebook time, a little earned media, regardless of which side of the issue you're on. So I've got about a little less than 40 seconds here to go. And once again, it's good to be back at Tall Tales after 2 days off. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you all tomorrow on Tall Tales. So adios, Stegupa.